Hey everyone, Bryan Stahl here, Fidelis Mortgage, the teacher, the student, the entrepreneur, and today, once again, I am the student. I'm with an internationally known speaker that led the wealth mastery at Tony Robbins for the last 15 years. He's also responsible for $50 billion worth of sales made. I want to introduce to you Joe Williams. Joe, you're bringing to our audience 3 topics to help them in their presentations and in their business life. So I really just want to hand it over to you and thank you for coming on.
Awesome, Bryan. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. As you gave a glimpse of in our working relationship, but also what's become our friendship, presentations are the ultimate secret weapon for leaders who are in sales. A lot of people shy away from it, frankly, because I know I did when I was a young man in sales, because A, I was just plain scared. B, I think there's also a lot of myths out there, some of which will bust today, that hold a lot of people back when it comes to sales presentations, public presentations, workshops, trainings they might have to hold, talking to their team if they're an entrepreneur, they have employees. And so there's a lot of nonsense out there. Today I just want to kind of cut through some of the fluff, give you 3 things you can do to become more powerful in your next presentation. If you use one, you'll be better. If you use all 3, you'll rock it. And so the first one is really this. One of the biggest mistakes that clients, when they come and work with us, make is they're worried about, what do I say, Joe? Or worse yet, what if I forget what I'm going to say? And God, I can relate to this so much. As a young man, when I was starting out in my late teens, early 20s, petrified of public speaking. My heart would race out of my chest. I literally would throw up before I would have to speak. I'm fair-skinned, so I don't hide my emotions very well. I turn beet red, and sweating and everything else, because I'm worried about forgetting what I was going to say. I was taught a presentation method that some of you may have heard before, which is script it out, memorize it, rehearse it, and then say it that exact way. And that's great for those of us that have wonderful memories and can do that. I also had severe dyslexia and a bit of ADHD. And so remembering things like that were almost impossible. What I realized the real deal is this, though. You've got to be driven, number 1, by outcome. What is the result you want to get? That's far more important than what you're going to say. If you're clear enough on where you're going, the outcome or the result, the accomplishment, the achievement out the other side that you want to get with that audience, you'll find the right words, you'll find the right stories, you'll find the right analogies, and you'll figure out a way to get there if you're crystal clear on your outcome. And again, in my world, what I try to help people do is not just get up and get through a talk without making too many mistakes or, even doing a good job. What I look for is the measure of success for me is, do you move people emotionally so they do something differently as a result of the time they've spent with you? Back in the old days, we used to hear, you got to decide, are you here to persuade, to entertain, or to inform? Well, you got to do all 3. And the one way that you can really do all that is by understanding, if I know my outcome, I will figure out a way. So be crystal clear on that, number 1. That's the most important thing right up front. Number 2, my second tip for you is this. The second tip for you is to get yourself into the state you need to be in before you ever walk on stage. What a lot of people do, and what I did in the very beginning, is I'd kind of timidly go up and I'd start into my presentation and I'd ramp up, so to speak. And a lot of people say, well, Joe, I'm fine once I get going. Well, here's the problem with that. A study that was done in the 1970s shows that within 7 seconds of a speaker taking stage, the audience makes assumptions, they make judgments, they make decisions about you that they hold as true whether or not you change it. It's that old, you can't get a second chance at a first impression. And so your opening 7 seconds, if you aren't in state when you walk up to start speaking, then your opening 7 seconds is going to be blown. Number 2, here's the real deal. People follow state. Real leaders are people that can inject emotions into other humans. I always say that I don't think Martin Luther King was standing up the day of his I have a dream speech worried about what if I forget what I'm going to say or what do they think of me. But a lot of people get into a state where they're very focused on themselves as well. And so that's what causes their stage fright to spiral out of control. So get out of yourself, get into serving those that you've got the privilege of their time and attention, and make that your driving force. And you'll find that you have much more power and the less you focus on yourself, the more you can not worry about how you're looking and what you're saying and those little things that just drive stage fright out of control. The third thing that's most important is this. For those of us in business, those of us in sales, every great presentation must end with an overt call to action. What I mean by that is you've spent time with a group, you maybe shared some ideas with them, you shared stories, analogies, all these great things. But then the real question becomes, well, what do I do with all this? And they're looking to you as the leader to tell them what to do next. So an overt, very specific call to action, one of the most important things that you can do to end any presentation. So to recap, number one, be driven by your result, be driven by your outcome. Number two, know your state before you ever get up there is in shape. Go out in the hallway. I was jokingly saying, make yourself like Superman in a phone booth that he used to jump into and put his cape on. Think of your getting in state that same way. Become a superhero before you ever walk up there. Take the stage, make the most of that opening 10 seconds or so, and you'll make that impression. Then finally, end with a powerful call to action where you actually ask them for the sale. If you're in sales, you ask them to do something differently. If they're your team and you want an increase in performance, you ask them to go out into the world and read something, to do something, to talk to somebody, to call somebody. The more specific your call to action, the better.
Audience, you don't just have to be a business owner, a salesperson. Let's just say I'm working at a company and it's more of like an intrapreneurship. What Joe's talking about, your presentations, your state, your call to action, when you're looking for a raise, when you're looking for a promotion, this is the kind of things that you really need to develop in. So instead of just going there and saying, I feel like I need a raise, there's a better way of doing it all. And an audience, as you look at my episodes here, and I hit on this 4 or 5 times, who's in my circle? So I ask you, who's in your circle? David Goggins, Satema Gali, Nate Bailey, Alex Mayer, and Joe Williams. So Joe spoke on stage with Tony Robbins for 15 years, ran his Wealth Mastery, and I wanted to learn from the best. I wanted to learn from one of the experts out there. And I don't want to give any away of Joe's secrets or too much of them, but one of the things that you really helped me with, and it's almost like when you do it, you're like, damn, why didn't I think of that? So when I do a little presentation on anything, right on my board back here, you can look at the back of my wall and there's yellow stickies on the wall. With what Joe's taught me, I can organize my thoughts. I can come across a lot better than I used to. I don't sweat. I don't have that anxiety, which I'm the same way. In college, I would have my head down. I'd be reading everything. I'd be like, oh God, when is this over? So who's in your circle? Joe, is there any way that if people want to talk to you or want to hear about your services, your speaking services, your coaching, remember, like Joe's worked with, I'm not going to name the airline, he can if he wants, but worked with an airline to get a deal with major government, part of the major government for, how many billions was that?
Yeah, we helped, and I'll name it, we helped Boeing and Lockheed and Raytheon, companies like that, over about 10 years that I worked in that business, win a little over $50 billion in new business. Now, let me be clear. The average size of a contract we were working on with these companies was a $10 billion award from the government. So you don't have to win too many to get to $50 billion, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's not that I'm that great. I just, hey, things came together. It worked really well. We had an 86% win rate in that business at the time of doing it. What we did, though, is these 3 things. Number one, we knew our outcome. We knew where we were ending before we ever started out. With you, remember when we started working together? Finish first. Mm-hmm. I started drilling into your head. When you think about giving a presentation, finish first. Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind, however you want to put it. And immediately that little tweak took you to the next level. So that's number one. Number 2, put your Superman cape on before you ever go up. And to a certain extent, guys and gals, there's a little room here for fake it till you make it. Now, I'm not a big fan of putting on masks and trying to be someone other than you are at all. In fact, one of the things we work on is you being very natural at your absolute best and making that your presentation style. But if you have to fake it a little bit until you make it in the beginning or around your state, then go ahead and do that. It'll make that stage fright not completely disappear because, Bryan, like we talked about, Stage fright for most people is an incurable disease. It's never going away completely. What you can do is you can get it to the point though where you mitigate it, you know how to work with it, and it can actually get you up for the game. You look at any professional athlete back in the locker room or anything right before they come out to play, they're in state, whatever you want to call it. Now, most of us go, oh, I'm nervous, I'm nervous, I'm nervous, I'm nervous, and we succumb to our state. We don't control our state. So that's really what I'm saying with number 2. And then number 3, strong call to action. A call to action is either change a behavior or change a belief. That's what you want to do with your audience. You want them to do something differently, behavior, or you want them to think and decide things differently, belief. Think of your call to action in those 2 forms. And if you put all those 3 things together, guys and gals, I'm telling you, I've done this with tens of thousands of people over the years. Those 3 things alone are enough to transform the effectiveness of your next presentation. And if, to your point, Bryan, somebody does want to learn more about what we do, you can just go to my website. It's joewilliamsonline.com. joewilliamsonline.com. You can download a free copy of my book called The Impact Awakening there. It'll take you more in depth into this. And then if you want to find out any more about what we do and our work one-on-one, you can find out about it there.
That's great information. And as you guys know, my project to the public is how to take my company business from 5 million to 10 million, hiring more people, hiring veterans. And Joe's a strategic part of that. So we talk very often to where I bounce ideas off of him. I read a lot of books. You see, the mind's a vacuum, and I need help on organizing those thoughts, those ideas. There's nothing that I can trump. Like Joe has times 10 more experience than me in all of those things. So everything that I read or I hear or even do myself, my mistakes, there's nothing that trumps his experience. So I go to that experience to perhaps maybe he's ran into it and he can divert me from making a mistake he made or a mistake someone else made. You can save so much time. You can save decades by learning from other people. So I'm going to sign off, guys, and we'll put his contact information there below. I haven't talked about Joe much before because he was kind of the ace card in the back pocket. I was like, do I want to introduce him to the public or not? But if you have a big project coming on,
you wanted me to be your best kept secret or something like that in business, wasn't it?
Yeah, but guys, if I was out there presenting to a massive company a product or some sort of pitch to where my company was selling something, I highly advise you to check out Joe. Even maybe you can even hire him for a specific project. But we appreciate you, Joe. Thank you for being on here, sharing those 3 tips. And guys, have a great day.